Now, to the scandal that's seen the resignation of CIA Director David Petraeus. The woman at the center of it all reportedly said the U.S. had detained fighters in Libya months before the attack on the U.S. consulate in September. The CIA has now denied those reported comments by Petraeus' biographer, Paula Broadwell. And the U.S. President Barack Obama had issued an executive order in 2009 banning the CIA from taking prisoners. Petraeus stepped down from his post last Friday after the FBI found he had an extramarital affair with Broadwell. So now that the CIA director's position is open, who will fill the empty seat? Well, leading candidate is Petraeus' deputy, that's Michael Morell. And that's according to the New York Times, which sources several current and former U.S. intelligence officials. But if he were to turn it down, then Obama could pick John Brennan, a retired CIA operative who once headed the agency's post in Saudi Arabia. And he could also choose the current National Security Advisor, Thomas Donnellan. And then there's U.S. Congressman Mike Rogers. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Kurt Volker is executive director of the McCain Institute for International Leadership at Arizona State University. He's also a former U.S. ambassador to NATO, joining us now from Washington, D.C. to discuss the Petraeus issue. It's good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So what's next for the CIA? Who might replace General Petraeus permanently, in your opinion?
Well, certainly his deputy, Mr. Morell, is the acting director and will be for some time. Naming a new director would require a process going through the Senate, and I think that there's going to be a period both of vetting whoever that new candidate would be, and also making sure that the shakeout of the last couple of weeks is smoothed over and that the new person coming in is not inheriting a mess in the middle of it, but rather giving an opportunity to then steer the direction of the CIA for some time to come.
Right. Well, let's actually talk about the scandal involving General Petraeus, because for the director of the CIA to have an extramarital affair and to cheat on his spouse, is that considered in any way a security threat, a breach of security, and a threat to national security?
Well, I think in the first instance, it's a question of standards and the standards that we hold our own people accountable to. So that if you were a member of the military, it would be illegal to engage in an adulterous affair. If you were in the CIA, it would certainly be frowned upon and something that would go into your record, and there would be actions or consequences to you as an individual if it were found out that you had engaged in an affair. And certainly there's the risk that a foreign intelligence service could blackmail an individual in that situation. So that's why these standards are there. So it's incumbent upon the leader of an organization like that, when such an incident occurs, to take responsibility, personal responsibility, and step down as he did.
Right, and there's been some indication that Broadwell, in fact, could have gained access to classified material. If that is indeed the case, Mr. Volker, then could General Petraeus be prosecuted?
Well, the first question is whether or not she did have access.
Right.
And as you heard, the CIA denied the initial report that she had referenced classified material in a speech that she gave. On the other hand, I also saw a New York Times report today that just gave a general indication that she may have had access to classified material or had classified documents on her computer, but that these were not traceable to Petraeus. So certainly there is the risk here that if they were traceable to Petraeus, that those documents got into her possession through her relationship with him, that would put him in jeopardy, because it would be a violation of law for him to provide her with any of those materials. Again, there's no indication to this point that that has happened, but if that were the case, that would be a legal jeopardy for the general.
And what do you make of the fact that congressional leaders were not told of the investigation sooner than they were? I mean, sooner than they were made aware, rather. Who should be notified in these types of investigations?
Well, this is really one of the most interesting questions. The fact that a leader of an organization has an affair and steps down, that itself is not terribly earth-shattering. What's interesting is that the affair took place between a year and 6 months ago. The FBI had been investigating this for months. Perhaps Attorney General Holder appears to have been notified at some point, but that the information allegedly was kept from the White House or not briefed to them until the eve of the election. And then this also took place just before General Petraeus was due to testify about the events in Benghazi later this week. So there are several things that raise questions that I think need to be answered. Why did this investigation go on without the notifications that one might have thought would be normal, given that it's the director of the CIA? Why did this only come out in the day of the election itself? And then why is it also happening just before the hearings to take place on Benghazi. If there's no story here, if there's nothing to talk about, then I think the answers to these sorts of questions should come out very quickly and very convincingly.
And just briefly, Mr. Volker, you mentioned Benghazi there. So what does this all mean then for the Benghazi testimony?
Well, it means that his deputy, who's now the acting director of the CIA, will testify to the best of his ability based on the documents available to him as the acting director of the CIA. What you're not getting out of that is General Petraeus' own personal knowledge and judgment that was exercised leading up to and then during the crisis itself. And I think that's something that lawmakers will very much want to hear. What was going on with perceptions about security, requests for more security, responses to those requests for more security, and what was General Petraeus' own perception at the time as the director of the CIA as to how those requests were being handled, and then what happened in the moments of the incident itself. And I still think there's a lot of questions that the lawmakers will want to have answered.
All right, Kurt Volker, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.